It's a shocking moment when a group of corrupt cops targets an innocent black man, setting him up for a crime he didn't commit. But what they don't know is that this man isn't just any victim. He's someone who holds all the cards. As the officers close in, convinced they have the upper hand, they fail to realize that this encounter will change everything. With a mind sharper than they expect and the power to expose their dark secret, the tables start to turn in ways they never saw coming. What begins as a routine arrest quickly spirals into a dangerous game of cat and mouse. The cops think they're in control, but the black man is about to reveal a shocking twist, one that could destroy everything they've worked so hard to hide. How will this intense showdown unfold? The fate of both sides hangs in the balance. The man they targeted, Marcus, was no stranger to the harsh realities of a system built against him. Growing up in a neighborhood where police presence was more of a threat than a safeguard, he learned early on how to navigate a world that saw him as a suspect before anything else. But Marcus was different. He wasn't about to let them get away with this. He had something they didn't know about, something that could expose their dirty little secret. The cops, Officer Matthews and Detective Cooper, thought they could frame him and walk away without consequences. But Marcus had been watching them for weeks, piecing together their moves, their patterns, their mistakes. The arrest wasn't random. It was a setup, meticulously planned by a department that thought they could control him. But now, Marcus was the one with the upper hand. How long before the truth came to light? Time was running out, and so was their luck. As Marcus sat in the back of the police cruiser, the cold metal against his wrists, he could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Matthews and Cooper kept glancing back at him with smug expressions, certain they had him cornered. But Marcus wasn't afraid. He had something they didn't: the truth. They'd messed with the wrong person. He knew that with every passing second, their grit on the situation was slipping, and he was in control of the narrative now. What they didn't realize was that Marcus had been recording everything: the shady deal he'd witnessed weeks ago, the police brutality he'd seen firsthand, and the coded conversations between Matthews and Cooper that hinted at something far darker than just corruption. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Officer Matthews' partner, Detective Cooper, was starting to feel the weight of his own decisions. He wasn't as sure of himself as Matthews. The guilt had been eating at him for weeks now, especially after that incident last month, the one that had crossed the line. He tried to push it down, telling himself it was just part of the job, but as Marcus sat there, unwavering, it felt like everything he had done was coming back to haunt him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to be exposed. He had to be careful. One wrong move, and everything could unravel. But the deeper he dug into this cover-up, the harder it was to get out. As the interrogation room doors creaked open, Marcus could feel the tension building. Matthews entered first, his eyes cold and calculating. Cooper lingered by the door, his nerves evident despite his best efforts to hide them. The moment was approaching fast. Would Marcus stay silent, or would he reveal everything he knew? The stakes were higher than anyone realized, and the truth, however dangerous it was waiting to be uncovered. The air in the interrogation room was thick with silence, broken only by the faint hum of a flickering overhead light. Marcus sat at the table, his hands resting on the cold surface, but his mind was a million miles away. Matthews circled him like a predator, eyes narrowing with each passing second. He could feel the tension rising. Matthews was trying to intimidate him, but Marcus wasn't going to break. Every move, every word from these officers only made him more certain that they were guilty of something far bigger than just this setup. He could almost hear the ticking of a clock in the back of his mind. Time was running out, and Marcus knew he had to act soon, or this moment would slip away. Matthews slammed a folder onto the table, causing Marcus to flinch, but he didn't show fear. "You're in way over your head, Marcus. You think you can just walk out of here and expose us?" Matthews' voice was low, threatening, but Marcus could hear the crack in it. Matthews knew they were on the verge of losing control. Marcus met his eyes, his voice calm but resolute. "You don't get it, do you? You're not in charge here." He didn't need to say more. He could feel the weight of the truth in those words. Matthews could deny it all he wanted, but deep down, he knew that the power had shifted. Cooper lingered at the edge of the room, watching the exchange with a growing sense of unease. His hands shook slightly, a stark contrast to his usually steady demeanor. It was clear now, the walls were closing in on him. His partner, Matthews, was too far gone to see it, but Cooper wasn't so sure anymore. Every piece of evidence Marcus had been quietly gathering seemed to be connected to something bigger, a web of corruption that stretched far beyond what they thought. And Marcus knew it all. Cooper could feel the heat of the moment, the weight of his choices crushing him. If Marcus pulled the right strings, they were both finished. Matthews leaned in closer, his breath warm against Marcus' ear. "You're making a mistake. You have no idea what we're capable of." Marcus didn't flinch. He'd been down this road before. He knew how these men operated, how they used fear to keep people quiet, to control their lives. But not this time. This time, Marcus was the one holding the cards. The digital recorder in his pocket was the key to unraveling everything, but only if he could get it out without them noticing. The seconds stretched into minutes, and every passing moment felt like an eternity. Marcus could see the pressure building in Matthews, the subtle twitch in Cooper's hand as he gripped the doorframe. The tension was unbearable. He was moments away from exposing it all. The truth was just within reach, and the only thing standing between him and freedom was a single move. Would Matthews crack first? Would Cooper betray him? Or would Marcus walk out of this room, holding the fate of them all in his hands? Just as Marcus prepared to make his move, the door to the interrogation room suddenly swung open. A new figure stepped inside, someone neither Matthews nor Cooper expected. Detective Ramirez, a quiet but respected officer from a different precinct, stood there, his eyes scanning the room with cold precision. His sudden appearance sent a shockwave through the room. Matthews' face darkened, a flicker of panic crossing his features. Ramirez was no stranger to their world, but he didn't belong here, not in this moment. Not with Marcus at the center of everything. "What's going on here, Matthews?" Ramirez asked, his voice calm but laced with authority. "I was told Marcus was being questioned about the robbery, but this doesn't look like standard procedure." Matthews straightened up, his jaw clenching. "It's nothing, Ramirez. Just a misunderstanding." But Marcus could see the tension in Matthews' eyes, the way his partner's hands shifted uncomfortably. Ramirez wasn't here by accident. He was here for a reason. And whatever that reason was, it wasn't good for Matthews or Cooper. Cooper's face had gone pale. He exchanged a quick look with Matthews, but Ramirez wasn't fooled. He could see the cracks in their facade, the weight of the secret they were trying so hard to bury. "Don't try to cover this up," Ramirez added, his gaze narrowing on the two officers. "I know what's going on here. I've been following your every move." The room froze. It was as though the walls themselves were closing in, and Marcus could feel the shift in the air. Ramirez wasn't just a bystander, he was a threat. The realization hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Ramirez wasn't here to help him. He was here to finish what Matthews and Cooper had started. But why now? Why had Ramirez shown up at this critical moment, just when Marcus was on the verge of exposing everything? Matthews tried to play it cool, but his voice betrayed him. "What do you mean? There's nothing to follow up on. You're jumping to conclusions." Ramirez stepped closer to Marcus, his eyes studying him carefully. "I've been watching you for weeks, Marcus. I know what you've got." The words hit Marcus like a storm. Ramirez knew, but how? Before Marcus could react, Ramirez pulled out a thin, sleek device from his jacket pocket. It was a small recorder, a direct feed to his own hidden network, a way for him to keep track of everything happening in this room. "I've been recording too, and now it's all coming to light," Ramirez said, locking eyes with Marcus. The ground beneath Marcus' feet felt like it was shifting. In that moment, everything he thought he knew was thrown into chaos. Ramirez wasn't playing for either side. He had his own agenda, and it wasn't to protect Marcus. But as the tension swirled, Marcus realized one thing. If Ramirez was truly tracking everything, he had one chance left. If he could turn the tide just right, if he could leverage Ramirez's presence, he might just be able to expose all three of them. But how? Time was running out, and the stakes had just been raised to a whole new level. Marcus felt a cold rush of realization as Ramirez's words sank in. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in with every passing second. He had no idea how far this web of corruption stretched, but it was clear now. Ramirez wasn't here to help him. He was a player in this twisted game, one that had far more layers than Marcus had anticipated. But just as everything seemed to be spiraling out of control, Marcus caught sight of the recorder Ramirez had so confidently pulled from his jacket. In that moment,